Good. I don't know whether to say morning or afternoon, but hello and thank you for joining us today. This is More to the Story with Molly White. And Molly is not with us today. I'm Mary Browning, usually the co-host. So welcome. We want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Stephen Hotze of Hotze Health and Wellness Center. He is one of our main sponsors, and we're thankful to him for making this possible. And for others of you out there that are sponsoring us, we thank you as well. You're getting the message out. And if you are interested in becoming a sponsor, log on and let us know. We'd love to have you join us. Today, we will be touching on a topic that is about abortion and sexual violence and interpersonal violence and a history of sexual assault. So if you have that kind of history, or even if you don't, you might find yourself getting triggered with today's content. Please continue to listen, but consider that an invitation to another level of healing. And as you join us, you will hear a place where you can get that type of healing, that special type of healing that specifically addresses this kind of harm. Our guest today is Kelly Dunne with Rachel's Vineyard. She is the project manager for that organization, which is a large organization that is battling back a lot of trauma and harm from abortion and from other things. So we welcome you, Kelly Dunne, to today's podcast.
The wonderful welcome. And I look forward to enlightening our audience on this topic, no matter how grim it is. So let me start with some stark realities about sexual abuse and then how it's related or it encourages the abortion industry. The International Labor Organization estimates that there are 24.9 million victims of human trafficking in general. Now, of that 24.9 million victims, 4.8 is sexual trafficking victims that they experience the commercial sexual exploitation. It is, big business. It's bigger than NFL and let's see, Major League Baseball and all the major sports that you can think of. It's bigger than that. So globally, then, what that means, if we start drilling down, is that 736 million women, that's 1 in 3, have been subjected to physical and or sexual intimate partner violence, IPV, or non-partner sexual violence, or both at least one time in their life. Further, 55% of girls and 35% of boys experience some form of sexual abuse before the age of 18. And these figures are on what is reported. So we have reason to believe in the research community that really those numbers are actually higher, unfortunately.
Because the reporting would be underreported. So many are still hiding in that shame and secret.
Exactly. Or afraid of their abusers, so they won't say anything.
Yes.
And cry out for help. So what that equates to is then 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be sexually abused before the age of 18. And then if we bring it to the U.S. and drill down for the last time, it means that someone is sexually assaulted every 68 seconds.
And that's just a little bit over a minute. So almost every minute someone's being sexually assaulted. Wow.
Yeah. So, what that speaks to is there was a study put out by Christchurch Health and Development Study. And when they did this longitudinal study, the results indicated that the experience of childhood sexual abuse leads to increased rates of pregnancy, which in turn leads to increased rates of abortion. And are we really shocked at any of that?
No, that's really, it's like a duh. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about trauma a little bit and what it is, because we hear that word over and over and over and over. Oh, I'm triggered. Oh, I'm traumatized, and sometimes I think we use it loosely and we don't recognize, what's going on out there. So, but trauma does happen in varying degrees. It could be something mundane and simple. So, for example, to date, I do not like green peas. I don't. My mother made me sit at the table one evening, so I finished them all off my plate, and that was that. But you know what? Do I feel triggered or feel traumatized by any of that? I do not. But it's something I kind of carry with me because I don't like them. I'll push them out of shepherd's pie or anything else. And it's something for me to laugh about, or we talk about mom or grandmom stories of what they did, back in the day. However, certainly as we watch the news and things that shake out globally because of all the social media platforms that are readily available to us, we know that this world is filled with people carrying wounds that go very deep and very unresolved. And in fact, really, the essence of trauma is that it becomes immensely overwhelming and unbearable. And why? Well, it's because it's what is happening to that person in their mind and how their body feels is so unacceptable that they just simply block it. It's not part of their cognitive understanding because it's just so terrible. And that's the body's and the brain's way of kind of protecting them and helping them to deal with that momentarily, of course, but unfortunately it goes much deeper than that. And really, at the end of the day, traumatized people don't really repress that traumatic experience. It actually becomes a fixed moment in time. And then later, that experience, they draw on that and then have subsequent post-traumatic behavior or reenactments. So that's what, trauma really is all about. So when we look at abuse of any kind, we do know that it not only distorts, but it really disfigures our human dignity. And that's what we're dealing with here, the behavior side, that person, lacks that. This is certainly true of the experience of abortion, especially if it's coerced or the abortion occurs because there's been abandonment or betrayal. And as a matter of fact, our abuse survivors tell us that often they struggle to feel safe or protected or secure.
I'm going to ask a question, Kelly, just about something you said about trauma. And you said even though the memory of the trauma might be repressed, that it's still something that's operating in a person's life. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I thought that's what I understood you to say.
And that's why, when someone talks about, oh, my friend, abuses alcohol or abuses the drug or the multiple abortions or the whatever other kinds of behaviors that aren't necessarily what we consider good choices. It's a part of getting that trauma out or dealing with that. And it's obviously not being dealt with in a healing, appropriate manner. From our perspective, what we know should be healthy for the spirit, what should be healthy for the body, what should be healthy for the mind. So.
Okay, thank you.
So when we talk about women specifically with sexual abuse or any form of physical or emotional abuse in their history, they are in particular very vulnerable to coerced abortions. Moreover, abortions, when they're forced, are really it's a tool to control by that abuse. So they want to maintain that control. Especially in the human trafficking realm, because it's big business, that they look at that person as a cash cow rather than a human being. So, and yet here are some of the ways in which those abusers try to control the pregnancy outcomes. Because you say, well, how can a woman put up with that? Why would they go for that coerced abortion? Well, I'll tell you. So some of it comes from that they are often threatened violently, that bodily harm will be killed if they don't get that abortion, or harm will come to their loved one if they don't get that abortion, or that abuser will be violent, any way they can to the body to either cause that miscarriage or harm to the fetus. Or the fourth way is certainly they will just deny prenatal care in the hopes, again, that baby could be starved, or if there was something wrong or whatever, that woman would not be allowed to go to the doctor like you and I, would go to the doctor our whole 9 months. So now that I've given some background, hopefully, or maybe understanding, as the audience begins to think about maybe that friend or that neighbor or that relative, and I'm not saying everybody's trauma ridden so much that it leads to the abortion. I'm not saying that, but an overall general thought process. I would like to share a couple of people that came forward. Obviously, their names have been changed, but they really begin to illustrate that connection between the sexual abuse and the abortion. So we're going to start with Sheila. Sheila was sexually and physically abused in her childhood. Not surprisingly, she ended up with abusive partners. She looked for love in all the wrong places and repeatedly found herself pregnant with no partner support. This is what Sheila stated about her 5 abortions. There's an enormous hole in my heart, a source of tremendous grief at not having my children. I usually experience deep depression during the holidays, especially at Christmas. Abortion for me has been an inhumane way as any abusive relationship I have ever been in. My abortionist took the place of my abusive father and my abusive partner. Neither had any comprehension of my real needs as a little girl or later as a woman. Now I continue to be punished by empty memories of what could have been, what should have been. It's a stark reality that I must live with. The truth of my life is hideous. My abortions, like my childhood, are a pain that will never go away. And really what Sheila's abortions serve is it really symbolizes the damage that was done to her inner child by mimicking the deprivation of the love, the childhood, and the life that had occurred during her own traumatic childhood. And Sheila chose to terminate each of those pregnancies with that tremendous grief, tremendous heartache, and saw herself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances. And each time that abortion came around, she felt helpless each time. She consented to the procedure because she said, well, just another casualty, I guess. And so that road to reoccurring trauma really could have been predictable, quite frankly. And the abortion was a continuation of a pattern begun in her childhood and then extended into her adult life. And it really has served to reenact her trauma while depriving her of the joy of having those children that really brought meaning to her life.
This causes me to remember we had a guest on a while back, and that guest actually considered the abortion as a form of rape, which,
Yeah,
so when you're talking about how Sheila describes her experience, and that it's like an extension of the abuse, as I don't want to say it's a learned behavior, but as she wasn't protected as a child from, if her abuser was her father, it sounds like it was,
yeah,
that she didn't have any healthy example of protection. And so she doesn't even really have that experience. So she's living it out over and over, the trauma.
right.
So
Yeah, and I actually, but you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what another point I was going to make, that it really is another form of abuse, the abortion. Yeah,
and we usually just look at the person the woman is making a choice. The cultural rhetoric is this is a woman's choice, when I think research shows it's not, most often, it isn't even something the woman wants.
Right.
And this really underscores that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, and the thing, and then, and when we take a look again at your statement, at the abortion can actually be the extension of sexual abuse, and we look at that pain and how deep that meaning is that goes beyond the crisis pregnancy and the abortion. Well, we understand with human behavior, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, can be motivated by conflicts, psychological cravings, unmet needs, and behaviors that feel normal because it's familiar. So that's why so many times that person of the sexual abuse or the interpersonal violence, they kind of protect their abuser because that's all they know. And it's just so cyclical. It kind of goes round and round and round. So if a history of sexual abuse has existed before an abortion, the woman may experience the abortion itself as, again, simply as a further continuation of the violation of self that has gone before. In the abortion, the abortionist's hand or instrument penetrates into the protective and sacred part of the woman's womb. The abortionist is usually male, and the entry point is the same as where the woman was violated by the men in her past. So the fact that abortion, again, it does resemble that sexual abuse because of the connection. This is just another person that's going to violate me.
Yes, but it's familiar, so it's kind of normal for me. Yes.
So, what happens with the in the destruction of that child growing inside her echoes the way the sexual abuse destroyed her own innocent childlike nature. So, in some cases, abortion can take on elements of symbolic suicide. Really, the death of that innocent inner child is a reenactment of a traumatic loss of the abused woman's own self.
So, Kelly, as far as I know, the most abortion facilities don't ask any kind of questions about past sexual abuse or harm or interpersonal violence, to your knowledge either.
No,
No.
they do not. Now, if somebody happened to speak about that, which they're not going to because they might be afraid of that abuser or that trafficker or that pimp, that whoever. The abortion clinic by law would have to report out that this person admitted that they had sexual abuse. But they're not going to approach someone. They're not going to be, as a side note, I was formerly an educator for 27 years. And as educators, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, I would imagine it's throughout the 50 states, we were trained on several occasions to look for signs of children that potentially looked like they were being trafficked or abused or anything like that. And if there was any kind of suspicion, we were required by law to report that out. Fortunately for me, I don't know of any child. I didn't recognize any child. Everybody seemed okay. I mean, who's to say after 27 years? But it was something I kept my eye on, particularly, again, no offense to my boys, but particularly my girls. I really, my teenage girls, because I taught middle school and high school. And, again, as the social media began to come into play and the Instagram and the Snapchat and all the pictures that, these kids would do, we were heightened to that, for that kind of thing. But back to your point, would an abortion clinic ask those kinds of questions? Probably not.
So no screening being done,
No screening.
no double checking, no emotional or counseling support provided.
No. So, I mean, and again, I can't say that with 100% certainty. I would think they'd question bruises, but I don't know. I don't think
I've
so.
never heard of anyone that has had that kind of screening.
No, no. So I'm going to present to you another testimony, and with Sheila, it was about feeling like the abortion that occurred as a result of the abuse was an extension of the abuse itself. We're going to talk about Marcia, who the abortion for her was about regaining that sense of control that she didn't have as a child. So Marcia, like Sheila, also had a childhood of habitual molestation from her uncle and his friends. As an adult, she became a topless dancer in a sleazy nightclub. And in the nightclub setting, she could reenact the humiliation of being the object of desires of men, but with an empowering twist. In the nightclub, Marcia held the reins of power. Through the stage manager and bouncers who protected her from the groping hands of the customers, she could excite men as she had as a child, but control their advances. Also, as an erotic dancer, she was paid a great deal of money to do what she once experienced as humiliating. As for many, if not most erotic dancers, the nightclub was a place where Marcia could attempt to master the traumatic experiences of her abusive childhood. It provided a forum in which she could reenact sexually provocative behavior while exercising some control over the excited men, the type of control she never enjoyed as a child. Marcia was unable to see, however, that while her erotic dancing provided temporary emotional and financial compensations for her wounded childhood, it was not truly empowering or healing. Her offstage life still lacked a sense of the control and dignity she so deeply craved. Moreover, in those promiscuous relationships, Marcia endured 8 abortions. And for years, she believed that abortion rights gave her command, authority, and control over her life and the lives of others. It was the type of power she had longed for as a child when she could not make the abuse stop. Yet, each abortion only fueled new rounds of dysfunctional relationships, crisis pregnancies, and abortions. So if we look at both Sheila and Marcia's stories, which I'm certain there are other people out there that have a similar history, really we're talking about two sides of the same coin, in that this forced abortions violate both the pro-life belief that abortion is an innocent life and the pro-choice idea of women's freedom to make their own reproductive choices.
Yes.
Because none of that is going on. None of that is going on.
There's no real freedom in any of this. Yes.
No. Mm-mm. So, for Sheila, she's going to mourn those children and look at the inhumane way in which that child was taken away from her. And for Marcia, she's going to mourn that in the end, she really didn't have any choice over her body as a young child, and even as a woman, that's missing those children.
This false sense of empowerment was really a warped sense of living out of the victimization she had endured. Yeah.
Exactly.
When you were talking about Marcia, I thought this is why the Jesus says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." I'm like thinking about, I've known some women that were pole dancers and different things. And I'm thinking, we don't know what their history was that brought them to the place where that seemed normal, or maybe even empowering.
Yeah. And again, just like, and then we can get into the porn industry and all that sort of thing. And, if we were to stop those local erotic dancer clubs, and really spent monies helping those women, find a job that they could sustain, themselves and their children.
Yes.
What a turn of events it could be,
Yes.
but that's not where we are
No.
present day, unfortunately.
Mm.
Yeah. So, uh, to wrap up Sheila and Marcia, we don't, Sheila never really mentioned if she moved on to try to get some healing, but Marcia did. She did carry that with her till she was age 51. Not uncommon for, in these healing programs like Rachel's Vineyard, we have lots of really senior citizen type of people that come to us and then be able to have their dignity restored and get the love that they've wanted. So she, at least we know, has somewhat of a happy ending.
Yes.
You want to call it happy?
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Right.
So
You mentioned Rachel's Vineyard, and do you mind telling the people a little bit about the program you have specifically for this population?
Yeah, absolutely. They and let me step it back just a
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
Say that in all of this, and this has been a very tough conversation, and you already let your listeners know that perhaps they might be triggered either for themselves or somebody that they suspect. But really, despite all the naysayers out there or the social media that puts out there, the negativity that is out there, I really think we need to make hope as part of our agenda, as opposed to what can't be done. Let's look at what can be done and where we can heal and who we can turn to. And
Yes.
so part of that, that glad for hope and restoration is through a healing program such as Rachel's Vineyard and Grief to Grace Ministries. So they both are retreat programs. The Rachel's Vineyard in particular, the leaders and teams help participants in a weekend unpack their trauma from their abortions and am able to, see for themselves that they are worthy in the eyes of the Lord. And that's very important. And when they begin to see that they are worthy, they then recognize themselves as a mother or a father, because men do come on these retreats, and that they can, really have a place to mourn the loss of that child. And so, the link to that, as I had just mentioned, is the Grief to Grace Ministries. How that came about is that as Rachel's Vineyard began to grow, both in locations in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. internationally, and the sites began to, more and more sites, one of the parameters to going on retreat is that the team does an initial intake form, asking because they want to, support them, that person, male or female, any way that they can. But through that avenue, what the teams and leaders began to report back is that 65% of the participants had sexual abuse histories. And as they reported that to Dr. Burke, Teresa Burke, who is the founder of Rachel's Vineyard Ministries, she took that data very seriously, and in year 2000 developed the Grief to Grace program specific for the sexual abuse, rape, incest, clergy abuse, any kind of traumatic violation or degradation of a person. So the goal of Grief to Grace is to end the isolation and the secrets of abuse in a week-long retreat. So it's 5 to 7 days as opposed to a weekend. And similar to the Rachel's Vineyard retreats, it integrates the latest trauma-sensitive psychology and neuroscience with living scriptures. Now, living scriptures are meditations that immerse participants in gospel scenes. So again, it's really not only helping the mind and the body, but certainly the spirit, to be on that healing journey, so to speak. So, like Rachel's Vineyard, both retreat programs, they are a group model because we want to create a safe and sacred space for people with shared histories of abuse and trauma. And then what that does by having a group is it's a built-in accountability and safety for all the participants. So, Grief to Grace, just like Rachel's Vineyard, we welcome anyone regardless of their faith walk. They could be on a faith walk, they could be not on a faith walk. It does not matter. The politics do not matter. We welcome anybody because we really are about that healing and unpacking the trauma and moving people in a direction.
And how would somebody find a Grief to Grace group? If I'm listening, a Grief to Grace group, if I'm a listener today and I have this in my background and I'm thinking, I believe that might be part of the answer to some of my problems, how would they find a Grief to Grace group?
The web address is www.grieftoggrace, just as it sounds and it's spelled, grieftoggrace.org. And then the Rachel's Vineyard is www.Rachel's Vineyard. Rachel's, again, all one word, no spaces, vineyard as it sounds.org.
Okay. So that's fairly simple. rachelsvineyard.org or grieftoggrace.org, and they could find either one of these, or if they're looking specifically for the 5 to 7 day, the Grief to Grace, they would really need to log on to that one.
If they go on to that website, it will bring you to a home page, and right smack dab in the middle of the home page is a button that says, I want to go on retreat. Of course, you can look at the menu bar and read all about it, but a person would readily be able to see where the retreat sites are, both in the U.S. and outside of the U.S.
And is there a charge for that, or does it vary?
There is a charge for that, and it is the same for all the retreat sites in the U.S. And what it includes is all the materials, the retreat house, the food. Like you just bring basically your toothbrush and your toiletries and your clothing, and the teams take care of the rest. But really, it's from what what the testimonies that I have read over and over, and I know sometimes for people it's a sticking point to go on a retreat. I know the teams offer scholarships, but really the outcomes of the result of that far outweigh than the price of the retreat. Now, again, I can't speak to somebody's budget, but I know we do everything in our power to get that person on retreat or find monies or donation or sponsorship or something, because it's that important to us to help that person.
That's good to know. And really what you're saying is this is an investment. And as you're speaking, and I'm hearing what you're saying, it would be an investment for me if this is my history, but also any children or grandchildren that I would have. It would really be creating a legacy of health and healing as opposed to carrying on that repressed trauma or that even known trauma.
Right.
Okay, so we just encourage the listeners and anyone out there that hears this or sees this, and if you know someone or if you've got this kind of history in your past, please log on to grieftoggrace.org, and they'll help you find a way to get the help you need.
Yeah.
Kelly, I want to thank you so much for being on the program today. This is a heavy topic, but you've made it understandable. Because it could be almost, kind of beyond reach, but you've made it easy to understand and you've given us hope. So thank you to you and to Rachel's Vineyard.
And thank you and to More to the Story for giving us the opportunity and reach that person, even if it's just one person. It's just gold. It would be such a blessing.
And I just want to mention that to the listeners out there, or those that may be attending a retreat in the near future, if you have abortion in your past, there is a way to bring purpose from that pain by signing a declaration at Operation outcry.org, and letting us know in there what the abortion has meant to you, the harm it has done, and the fact that you'd want to lend your experience to the cause. You can do that in a way that doesn't expose your identity. You can do first name only, initials only, or if you're prepared to be exposed, you can use your full name. So we invite you to sign a declaration at operationoutcry.org. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello, friend. Our broadcasting wanted to take a moment to personally thank you for being a listener of the More to the Story podcast. Whether you're a longtime subscriber or just found us, we're so glad you're here. This podcast is a community built on sharing, and that's where you come in. If an episode has ever resonated with you, please consider sharing it. Text it to a friend, post it on social media. Your recommendation is the most powerful way to help these important stories reach new ears. We are also inviting businesses and individuals to partner with us as official sponsors. Sponsoring the podcast is a wonderful way to reach a dedicated, thoughtful audience while directly supporting our mission. If you'd like to explore sponsoring the podcast, we invite you to visit our website at www.moretothestorypodcast.org. Again, that's www.moretothestorypodcast.org. Thank you for being a part of our story.